heady hybrid of Michael Ballack and Frank Lampard, or a roided Nick Powell? Just how good is Sverre Nypan?
Riktig fartsretning. Kan ta med seg Jayden Nelson, men går rundt og går på skudd. Sverre Nypan, og det en
Nypan appears to possess a natural instinct for goal scoring, displaying an uncanny ability to ghost into dangerous areas and capitalize on opportunities. And this reminds me of a young Frank Lampard. He's got impressive spatial awareness, timing his runs expertly into the box, sniffs out easy goals. So he's got that positional intelligence. He reads the play and he drifts into unmarked positions, near the edge of the area or towards sort of goal scoring opportunities of maximum opportunity, near post, far post. He's got a good smell for goals. His finishing is generally polished, reliable, very composed, can first time finish with accuracy, use both feet accurately. So that makes him pretty unpredictable for defenders. His left foot seems to carry a touch more finesse, can whip shots across goal into bottom corners with precision. I'd say he's got the technical ability to create shooting opportunities through quick footwork, particularly around the edge of the box. I'd say outside of the box, his shooting is at the moment less convincing. I'd say from 25, 30 yards. Hasn't quite got that power, precision, and technique off both feet to truly trouble goalkeepers. But I can see him potentially working on it and improving on it, and then he'll be a two-footed weapon from distance. But at the moment, not quite a Lampard or Gerrard just yet. So in summary, a solid inside the box finisher, needs to score more spectacular high difficulty goals, I think, in order to push that ceiling a bit higher. Most of his finishes are bread and butter opportunities, effective but unspectacular. If he really wants to elevate that profile and become an elite goal scorer, we need to see more jaw-dropping moments such as volleys, long-range audacious strikes from range. At the moment, needs a bit more technical refinement, but generally he's got a good core understanding of where to be in the box and smelling opportunities.
Svårt att se vem det var som klev av. Jovanovski in i alla fall.
I just passed my FIFA agents exam, so now officially a FIFA licensed football agent. So if you're a young player who needs advice, whether it's nutrition, whether it's technical, tactical, psychological, I can guide your career from academy level all the way to the pro level. If you're an existing pro level player and you need representation when it comes to contract negotiations, as well as all that technical stuff, transfer strategy, what's the best steps to take with your career, we can give you that guidance. We also work closely with clubs and directors of football, helping them with issues such as scouting, how to get the best out of their personnel, giving coaches tactical guidance as well. All the services that we can provide are all available on our website. Check the description below. So if you want Pythagoras in Boots as your football agent or even as a consultant, please don't hesitate to get in touch. In possession, Nypan's style of play skews more towards that of a second striker or advanced 10 rather than a traditional midfielder. His natural tendencies are to lean towards involvement in the attacking third, where he thrives on the half turn, looks to receive the ball between the lines and immediately drive forward. Short, sharp interactions around the box, linking with attackers. That's where he's at his best rather than orchestrating play from deeper areas. In terms of his pass volume, it's quite limited. He's averaging only 29 passes per game. So not a player who's heavily involved in the team's build-up or recycling possession, doesn't really take the responsibility to control the tempo or rhythm of play from deeper positions. And again, this is reminiscent of Lampard. This is reminiscent of Bellingham. Both these players, their primary contribution is to score goals, impact the game in advanced areas. They don't anchor the play. Nypan isn't someone who at the moment is dictating possession or being the central hub of his team's build-up. In terms of his strengths, he can demonstrate decent composure in terms of press resistance, can shield the ball effectively, can also perform quick, nimble touches to evade pressure. But as he's getting taller, he's getting bigger, his mobility under pressure, especially in these deeper areas, it reminds me a bit of a Declan Rice, where they're safe, they're conservative, but they're not someone who's truly going to master those tight, congested situations deeper on the pitch. And he just needs to get more involved. He needs to become more interactive if he's going to be a quality, deeper lying midfielder. In terms of creativity, Nypan demonstrates clear potential. He plays a significant number of through balls per game, can also break the lines with his passing, but it's not necessarily reflected in terms of high expected assist numbers, so he needs to take more risks in the final third. However, his decision making generally in terms of spotting runs, executing passes, seems to be pretty mature. He's got good IQ A defining trait also is his ability to execute passes with both feet, which provides versatility and unpredictability. It gives him disguise in his passes, allows him to unlock defenses in tight areas. So that gives him variety in terms of his creative repertoire. Occasionally uses things like back heels, dinked passes, reminiscent of like a Scholesy in that sense. But generally, I'd say his creative profile reminds me of a Lampard, particularly the simplicity and the effectiveness of his passing in and around the box. He doesn't really produce groundbreaking highlight reel assists, but he's got this consistent ability to make simple, high percentage plays. A bit like a Tom Brady in the NFL. So what I would like to see is him really push the boundaries in terms of his creativity, really challenge himself, but also keep that simplicity in his game because it's a definite strength. In terms of weaknesses, in terms of creativity, at the moment he's overhitting passes. Sometimes he's not fully judging the angles of where the pass is going to get cut off, whether his player can make that run. So yeah, his football brain isn't fully matured yet, but you can see with the age that he's at, generally he's making better decisions than making wrong decisions. So this part of his game just needs to be ironed out with age, with coaching, and you suspect that it will remain a definitive strength as his career progresses. From a statistical point of view, Nypan's dribbling is a strength, approximately 3 progressive runs per 90 minutes with a solid 56% success rate. So he's got this reliable ability to carry the ball forward without losing possession. He's not the most dazzling, particularly when you're comparing it to players like Musiala. I think his dribbling style is more towards efficiency rather than sheer flair, but that's not to say that he can't do, for example, Ronaldo chops and Cruyff turns. He's got that ability for sure in terms of technique. I wouldn't say he's as naturally as glidey as a Bergvall. He seems a bit more, stocky in terms of the way that but he's more powerful as well. He's got subtle shifts. He still has the ability to roll his foot over the ball, and particularly in and around the box, that's when you see him at his best. Good directional changes to outmaneuver defenders near the box because of that two-footedness. Really good at faking shots to then create space onto the other foot, and that makes him really dangerous in these close quarters. He's strong as well, so he uses his body to effectively shield the ball from opponents. Weaknesses, lack of pace. Hasn't got that explosive natural pace or acceleration. He's no Ricardo or Kaká. He's more power than sheer agility compared to, say, Musiala. So he's more of that Jude Bellingham build, I'd say, where they've got flair. They have got the ability to turn and change directions. But because of the size of the player, they're not going to be able to do it consistently and be consistently nippy, like, say, an Iniesta type player. So overall, I'd say he's more like a De Bruyne, deliberate, intelligent, effective, rather than flashy. In terms of Nypan's crossing, the stats aren't particularly mind-blowing. What he does have is this tendency to drift into channel areas, into the half spaces, which will allow him to deliver crosses into the box. And again, a bit like a Omar Marmoush in that sense, where these players can exploit these areas and get out wide regularly in terms of just their natural movement. In terms of his inverted crossing, there's a glimpse of creativity there. There's a glimpse of potential threat there. But overall, his crossing success rate is a modest 25%. And I think it indicates that he's got inconsistency in terms of executing effective deliveries into the box. The technical quality of his crosses is weak at the moment, particularly in terms of his left foot. It seems to be overhit and it lacks the precision to find targets consistently. It's quite a loopy trajectory. And it seems like he's hitting and hoping and rushing in terms of his crossing. Complete opposite of a De Bruyne who really picks out players inside the box. So what I'd like to see from Nypan is really build that picture of what's going on in and around the box, really perceive where defenders are going to go, where the weak spots are, and then also keep honing that technique to get more whip, get it lower in terms of the trajectory, and really find the people inside the box rather than just gambling as it is at the moment. From an error perspective, Nypan is someone who statistically is quite underwhelming. 26% success rate is pretty low for a player of his physical attributes, but the eye test suggests something completely different. He's got that willingness to compete. He's unafraid to challenge for aerial duels. He's fearless. He's got that willingness to put his head where it hurts. And it reminds me of Bergvall, a similar player from a similar region. Despite being quite young players, they play like men. They're not afraid to go in 50-50 up in the air and really take on their opponents. He's got good size as well, good leap. So he's got all the foundations you need to develop into a reliable aerial battler. Now, in terms of his technical refinement, yes, he does need it. His heading technique, his accuracy, he needs polishing. He doesn't quite demonstrate the finesse to consistently direct headers on target or use them effectively in build-up play. But what he does have is this box presence. He's got this knack for ghosting into the box. Again, timing of runs is good, and I think he's someone who could score a lot of goals from set pieces or even from crosses from late runs into the box. It reminds me a bit of a Jude Bellingham, where the aerial game's got the foundations to improve significantly. Positional intelligence, decent size, fearless approach. Bellingham has become quite an aerial presence for Real Madrid, and I think Nypan would be like that for whatever team he joins. So yeah, generally work on his technique, keep working on his timing, his judgment, keep getting physically stronger, but there's no reason why this can't be a strength of his game going forwards. From a defensive point of view, Nypan, 8 defensive actions per game, pretty high workload for someone who's primarily seen as an attacking midfielder. Success rate also consistently high, so he's quite efficient and effective in terms of his defensive contributions. It reminds me again of Jude Bellingham in terms of his willingness to track back, contribute defensively, and help his team out in deeper areas of the pitch. He's not a Mamouche, he's just generally an attacker in terms of his nature. Nypan is more of a midfielder who will come back, ball win, intercept passes, break up opposition plays. So he's quite a valuable player in a team that's either looking to sit deep and then counter-attack. He's going to be valuable in transitional moments. He's got that strength, he's got that physicality. So he's quite an all-rounded player. In terms of defensive IQ, I'd say his positional play sometimes lets him down. Sometimes he dives into challenges a little bit. So not someone that I would trust to become, say, the CDM of a team, but someone as a box-to-box midfielder in a three-man midfield, I think he'd be a good fit in that type of sense. His agility isn't quite elite, so he can occasionally be beaten by quicker, more agile opponents. So again, this is a reason why I wouldn't want to put him deep on the pitch and rely upon him as your main holding midfielder. Overall, though, he blends offensive and defensive quality, so he's a bit of a two-way player. Like Jude again, combative, works tirelessly for the team, and possesses the physical tools to influence the game in both boxes. In terms of Nypan's long passing, it's a bit of a mixed bag. There's definitely some potential. He's got the ability to scan the field and spot runners. He can also use both feet, which gives him a unique advantage. It opens up passing lanes that others would struggle to utilize. And sometimes when he does execute these long passes, they are quite breathtaking in terms of their execution. However, generally, he's got quite inconsistent technique. His long passes lack necessary weight, direction, whip, and this is off either foot. They're too loopy, makes them easier to intercept. Sometimes he forces long passes in situations where short, simpler options would be more effective. So there's a slight IQ issue at the moment. Perhaps it's just immaturity. So overall, there's a scattergun quality to his long passing, which makes it unreliable, and it's not a dependable weapon at this moment in time. Generally, I'd say he needs to work on his body being more compact, balanced when executing these long passes for greater control, power, use more drive, use more zip to make it more precise and impactful on the actual flow of the game. But yeah, bottom line is he's a two-footed player, so this could potentially become a bit of a weapon if he gets it right. But at the moment, it's raw. So we're just going to tactically look at the three main transfer options that Nypan has been linked with: Arsenal, Manchester City, and Aston Villa. Let's delve into the tactical board. So we're just going to start off by looking at Arsenal. And as we can see, they lined up in their 4-3-3 with Saka, Martinelli holding the width. Obviously, we know Saka's injured now, but just bear with me. And the midfield trio, usually of Rice, Marino, and Odegaard. At times, you can have Partey there, and you can have Rice in this left-sided position here. But, you know, if Nypan was going to get signed, you'd have to have Rice in the CDM position. Because for me, Nypan is best operating either in this Odegaard role, if Odegaard was injured, or supplementing Odegaard by providing an additional sort of attacking threat in midfield. And what this allows Arsenal to do is that it takes the burden of Odegaard as the main creator. Nypan would also box crash, score goals. He might pull out wide, allow Martinelli to cut in, and he can provide the crosses from wide areas because he's a two-footed player. Or he can even cut in here, right foot finesse. So he provides Arsenal with a more of a goal-scoring option than a Marino type of profile out wide. Now, the bigger question you have to ask is, can Nwaneri not provide that same profile? Could he not play in this midfield role, particularly if Arsenal, say, last 20 minutes of a game, it's 0-0, they really need to break open a stubborn defense? Could they not go with 2-8s here? You could have Odegaard, Nwaneri. Nwaneri can also provide that overlap. And is Nwaneri not a more talented player? Again, we haven't done a video on Nwaneri, but that's something worth asking. Or Saka could even go into this midfield position here. And Nwaneri could stay out wide. We know he's played out wide and he's done quite well there. So do Arsenal already have these in-house solutions? And does Nypan just overcomplicate the current squad selection that they've already got? They've already got issues on this front. Something worth considering. Another team that Nypan has been linked with is Manchester City. Now, as we can see, they've signed someone like Marmoush, who provides that verticality that's been missing since Alvarez left, and that takes the penetration sort of burden off Haaland. What Marmoush also brings is the ability to play in these half spaces, as well as drive out wide, be more of a winger, cut in, put crosses in, go down the line, put crosses in. So he's almost the perfect sort of inside forward, wide threat that City were asking for. What would Nypan bring to the equation? I think if they'd signed someone like Nypan instead of Marmoush, then you've got an issue because he's not as dynamic. He's not as mobile. He's more of a Kevin De Bruyne type profile. So he's not going to run beyond Haaland as much. He's going to need the whole team to sort of build that territory moving forward into the box. And then he's going to be an impact inside the box. He's not going to be that runner in behind to the same extent as a Marmoush who can turn counterattack into attack. Now, one other position that Nypan could play, which could be interesting, is this Gundogan role. I think if Nypan was to replicate this, where imagine you've got two midfielders here who can act as the double pivot, and then Nypan box crashes as that late running midfielder, I think that could potentially work for Manchester City. I could see him replicating this old man, still goal scoring, potent version of a Gundogan that's been such a success at Manchester City. That's something to watch out for. Another club that's been linked to Nypan is Aston Villa. Now, I think personally he wouldn't be able to play in this Kamara role. I don't think he'd be able to control proceedings as much as a Tielemans. So for me, it's this Rodgers role where I could see him potentially playing. Now, what he brings compared to a Rodgers, I think, is better IQ on the ball, more composure, and I think he would allow that midfield to keep the ball better. But what you lose with the Nypan is you don't have the same transitional threat. He's not going to be able to eat up the yards in the same way as a Morgan Rodgers can. Rodgers is just more athletic. That's not to say Nypan doesn't have good dribbling skills. We've already touched upon that. He's definitely got the progressive runs element in him. He can drive, but he's just going to not drive with the same level of speed. And one of the key tactical selling points of this Emery side is that this front four, they're very pacey, very agile, very pacey. So when Villa are compact and they break in transition, these four are a real threat in transition. So I think Nypan probably brings a bit more control. But what Nypan also brings, I think, is better IQ in and around the box. I think Rodgers, he's a goal threat for sure, but I think Nypan brings a bit more class and composure on the ball in these final third areas. So yeah, I think an interesting, intriguing option for Aston Villa, but not necessarily a key area of the pitch that I think needs upgrading based on their current roster. In conclusion, I think Nypan is a player who's got good, solid IQ. I think he reminds me a lot of a Lampard in the sense that whilst I don't really trust him in the deeper areas on the pitch, I think as his body's growing, I think he's going to become stiffer in the deeper areas of the pitch. But I do think that in and around the box, he's got a real natural smell for goals. I think he's going to develop his long shooting, I predict. I think his general passing range will increase with age as well. So definitely a very valuable player to have at the highest level against things like low blocks. But even in the big games, you could see him potentially scoring big goals, simple goals perhaps, but very effective goals at the highest stage. I think my question mark about Nypan is in terms of the magician element. He's not someone that I look at and I think you're going to be a goal level attacking mid. He doesn't have that same magical qualities as like your Zidane. So I've seen him compared to players like Pedri. For me, Pedri's just got way more natural talent. That's not to say Pedri is going to be a more superior goal and assister than a Nypan, but I just think he's naturally more of a talent in terms of there's an alien-esque quality about him. Nypan doesn't really strike me as much as an alien. What I do like about him and his main selling point is the two-footedness. That's quite unique. I haven't really seen that much players like that in terms of overall profile. In terms of what team suits him best, it's an interesting one. I'd say that he's a profile that's come through that not many teams need at the moment because we seem to be awash with attacking midfielder profiles. But he is a talent. So in that sense, due to the price tag that he's at, which is quite cheap, why not sign him as a punt? But I'd like to see him get regular football first, really blossom, refine all the weaknesses that we've spoken about in this video, find out what's his best position, what are his key selling points, his key traits, and then make that big move. Because I feel like if he makes that big move too early and doesn't get enough football, then we'll see a similar trajectory to Arda Güler at Real Madrid, where he's almost forgotten about and he's not really developing. So going to a place where he's getting regular game time and he's a key fulcrum on the side, for me, is the main step right now to really maximize his potential. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. Please like, share, and subscribe, and see you guys again next time. Bye.